and then because I don't know, old country, I got to talk with my hands because we're talking Italian, right? So you got to get the dialect right. But yeah, I think it's funny when they refer to it as the old country. It'd be like, okay, Vlad, like, what are you, the Italian sect of vampires? Like, you're not, and think about it in a way, it's, a blood cult, right? They just need to say blood for the blood god before they whack somebody, and you got a close circle. So, but now that I've offended an entire race of people, let's get the show.
What, vampires? Don't have feelings.
Yes, I know, right?
Hey, vampires totally have
get
feelings.
some original material. It's been 700 years. You guys are hung up on the same thing. Like, what's wrong with you? So,
I mean, I would love to have more like vampire mafia. That sounds great. Right. I mean, like Eastern Promises meets Twilight. Let's just fucking do it. Like, that'd be great.
Why are you gonna bring Twilight into it? So
I was just like something that's like, I don't know, but like Anne Rice stuff like that's already a little bit too close. Let's make it a little bit weirder.
But that's I guess that's part of my point too. Is like you barely got to squint and turn your head sideways to be like, yeah, the mafia, they're all a family. You got brought into the family. You do jobs for us for a while, like a Renfield, and then you get made. And then
if you have the right heritage.
Yeah, it's like,
exactly. Yeah,
I mean, the more I talk, the more real this sounds. And if I had known that when I was watching Goodfellas, it would have made more sense. So,
Well, what you should do is go play Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and even though it's an old game that's got a lot of bugs, it's basically this in LA. I played
Skyrim and Fallout 4. I know a game with a lot of bugs. I still play Destiny on occasion.
If you apply
Bloodlines, it's so good.
I think
if you apply the fan patch, there's like a pretty extensive fan patch which fixes a lot of bugs. And
he also that guy. I want to give him credit. He is opening up and files that were saved in the game that they couldn't really complete. So he's trying to get new content in it. And so that has a lot of bugs, but it's still new stuff. So yeah.
It's now an open tab, so sometime in the next 6 years I should get to it. So yeah.
How
many tabs do you have open right now?
Don't ask.
Yeah, don't ask that.
50?
Do not ask how much RAM Chrome is eating right now.
Yeah. Well,
no, Justin's a man of culture.
No. Chrome is the only way to fly. What do you mean, man of culture? Like,
yeah, Chrome is the culture.
Yeah.
Hard pass.
Whatever. So what are you using?
Edge?
Yeah, Safari. Yeah. Now, see, so I worked for a company where, all we did was web development because it was, a SaaS type of thing. Every single person, including all of the engineers, used Chrome except for one. She used Firefox. So she was also the only one with a Windows phone. So there was a lot of IT jokes and snobbery involved there. But I don't know. It says that I'm only using 545 megs of RAM. So it also says I'm using 62% somehow. But yeah, my laptop, everything's in the cloud, man. So like I don't run applications other than Zoom and Chrome. So anyway, so that's not what we're talking about. Tell me, Andreas, this was at least your movie, right? Goodfellas was your suggestion? Okay, I was worried that it was Ben's, but it wasn't old enough to be Ben's suggestion. It's like, Ben, you didn't even fucking show up. Like, what the hell, man? Did you get whacked on the way here? So,
don't have to worry about that. He got all that family obligations.
Yeah, e.g. whatever. So, yeah, I think, E.G. had family obligations because he's actually in New York, and so
he's New Jersey. He says he's New York. He's Jersey.
Hi, right? Just like you're Sweden. So
no. That's not the same. That's not even close to being the same. No.
So Andreas,
pitch us. Why is this a perfect movie for you? Defend your pick.
Right.
I mean, I'm not sure how to defend my pick. It's just one of those movies where I think I've seen it at least 10 times, like easily 10 times, right? And I never get tired of it. The acting is like, it's on point. The directing, the story's so good. It's largely, I've read up on the story, the person and story it's based on. There's some changes here. Some people are different and stuff, but it's largely also very true to life, which I think is kind of neat that you're watching a movie based on something in real life and it's actually mostly accurate. Yeah, Justin.
So, in case people weren't aware, because I wasn't until I started looking at the IMDb trivia and whatnot, it's based off of a book written by the main character, right? Basically, it's sort of his autobiography, and didn't he basically helped them enough with rewrites and things like that they ended up giving him co-writing credit.
So there was
So
the journalist
like
who
it's
wrote the
very
book
accurate.
interviewing the guy Henry Hill. So
Oh, it was the journalist that
yeah,
got the
yeah.
credits. Okay, I got you. So, but either way, yeah, like they pretty much. I mean, secondary source. How often does it happen in Hollywood? Like I remember when it came on, and it's like based off of a true story, and I didn't break out my litmus test to be like, okay, is it inspired by a true story, based on a true story, actually a documentary? But like this is really fucking accurate, especially for like Hollywood standards, right? Like some things get compressed, movie timeline wise and that sort of thing. Like they make some scenes intersect where they didn't necessarily. Like I think some of the stuff with Billy Bats like happened on successive nights, right? Whereas like in the movie it all happens at the same time, basically.
Yeah, and Billy, I
But
think the Billy Bats thing is over. Like he's like, he gets insulted, I'm gonna kill the guy, and then I think he kills him like a week or two later.
right,
He really
something like
carried
that, and
a
it's like,
grudge for that shoe shine joke.
yeah, right. Get your fucking box. Get your shine box. Yeah, but I mean, as far as Hollywood goes, like that's super forgivable, right? Like that's practically like non-existent. It's not like they cut
That's
out
like
huge
playing with
swaths
just with the
of.
attention span of an audience. They don't want to wait mentally a week for that to happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like it's a week-long intermission. We'll see you guys. We wanted this to be so accurate. This is the Snyder cut, so we're gonna have a 2-week intermission and then come back.
And I say that about a movie that spans decades, so whatever. But
Right. Well, yeah, that's another thing, and it is somewhat difficult to grasp because they don't always do some kind of transition or something like that. But as you watch it, your subconscious picks up on the increasing technology and the differences. And for me, one of the things was like it's obvious how much even the policing changed, right? Like you go from everybody's getting bribed to a few minutes later the cops that he can't bribe, so he gets busted his first time. Then you kind of get this 20 or 30 years worth of them just getting away with literally whatever the fuck they want. And then it culminates into chased by a helicopter. And it's like, certainly the police didn't have access to helicopters when the movie started, let alone the wiretaps and the helicopters and the lawyers and all this other stuff that kind of evolves over the course of the movie.
It really just shows like a lot of also like the technological the progress with like I read the other day like how is it from World War One to World War Two? We went from largely fighting with like almost muskets and still having line charge kind of tactics to World War II with planes and tanks and inventing the atom bomb and like the technological progress we've made in the past 100 years. And it's not really the point of the movie, right? But it's actually pretty amazing.
But it's evident, well. So yeah, and yeah, the World War One doesn't even fully encapsulate it because you're right. Like certainly the ground tactics did not keep up with the technology, which is why the death toll was so high, right? You've got chemical weapons and machine guns, really easy to kill lots of people, while you've still got your flamboyant uniforms and your, lining up like the colonial era, and shooting at each other. I mean, that's when they finally were like, maybe we should just dig trenches and not stand up there so much. But then you've still got, the trench charges across no man's land and in various battles and everything. It's World War One is kind of crazy because it's like it's fought during a transition, so it's kind of everywhere, and certainly World War Two, you see a lot of driven innovation. Like in World War One, they had planes, but they're still largely like balsa wood and canvas, some of the technology is still being invented and whatnot. In World War II, like now we're like, oh yeah, those planes were kind of a good idea. Maybe we should have fleets of them. and then you see the first actual carriers, like we would kind of recognize them today. And even still, they were in the process of kind of inventing those. Like in World War I, you had a couple of carriers, but it was like, we've got like 3 to 5 planes. How cool is that? Or you've got a blimp, the blimp can launch a plane. You don't see blimps in World War II. There's a reason for that. But anyway, that digresses from the thing. But yeah, the movie kind of encapsulates it. Like, to tie on to like it being a perfect movie, I would say this is one of my favorites, right? I wouldn't say that I particularly enjoyed it for some things. Like one of the like 3 words that I would use to describe it was nauseating, especially because as I was telling everybody in chat yesterday, like it triggers my lawful nature. Like sometimes I'm not really sure. I'm like, maybe I'm just as chaotic and bad as everybody else. And then I see all these bad guys getting away with everything and just murdering each other, just like with impunity. And like the cops all but catch them and then are just like completely incompetent. And I'm like, oh God, this is literally making me ill watching some of this,
At the same time, they did show the benefits, like the good sides of this mafia family, because like the way that they were looking out for each other, the way like there's even in the trivia, they're talking about just like how like cohesive they were as a neighborhood. Like you don't get to pick on each other. So when someone is trying to assault someone else, everyone else in the neighborhood was coming to defend her. Like, so like that type of like, yes, they were killing everyone, but they were also doing other protectionist good things. I could see why someone would want it. Like you see similar stories out of the cartels out of Mexico right now. It's like, well, this section of road was paved because this section of road is owned by the cartel. And so it's still like making people's day-to-day lives better.
Right.
That's how
it
these organizations get away with what they get away with, though,
exactly.
with their communities.
It doesn't excuse, but like it's
into, I mean, it's like Robin Hood, right? Like we celebrate Robin Hood, but from the lawful authority of the time, Robin Hood's the bad guy, right? But he gives the money that he stole to the poor, so therefore they're going to help him.
And then they become rich, and then he steals the money from them again.
Right. Yeah. It's a vicious loop. But but I, so yeah, I mean, I get you, but like, I think we could pave the roads without necessarily having to like murder the 10 guys that stole $6 million from me, since that's what the movie culminates into.
Sure. It's like, but I understand like the way that I really thought of it was encapsulated in the Community episode that they basically spoofed this. It was chicken tenders instead of cocaine, but it was like it was all their stuff. We were just giving it back to them. He basically fixed the logistics and everyone was happier because the logistics was already fucked up. And if the outside people are going to do it because the government isn't, I don't always blame them for going that way.
Well, I mean, there's certainly some things like the government doesn't have sole proprietorship over logistics, right? So yes, like that's where you get some private businesses, you get charities, things like that. But, I don't, this is probably going to get off field anyway, so I'm just going to torpedo it right now. But drugs, beating people, murder, protection rackets, yeah, sure, cool. Your neighborhood is super, super safe, and 2 streets over, you're roughing up the guy in the barber shop because he owes you protection money. Like, yes, your little microcosm of your neighborhood is protected, and how great is it that, the neighbors are looking out for each other. And if that were the extent of it, I mean, that's what Neighborhood Watch is, right? Like, that's great. Neighbors looking out for neighbors, that is great. Neighbors looking out for neighbors on their way to go whack somebody, yeah, now we got a problem, so, and what I was going to get at as well is like, despite the fact that I didn't enjoy these things and that sort of thing, I couldn't find any particular flaws with the movie. It's true to life. Like that was the other underlying nauseating part of it, is like, this shit happened. And this wasn't even like a one-off story. This wasn't the only way that this became fantastic and became sort of one of a kind is because of the heist they pull off at the airport towards the end, because it was the biggest heist at the time, right? Like you just had run of the mill, like Billy Bats, he's got a whole crew. The other guy over here, he's got a whole crew. That guy talking to Joe Pesci's character, he's got a whole crew, right? Like this shit's happening everywhere, at least, during this time in this movie.
I mean,
it's probably still happening today.
Still
yeah,
happening.
Exactly. So, that was the shit that I was like, yeah, I have a problem with that, but it's accurate. I'm not, it's like I said earlier, it's all but a documentary, right? Like they just didn't have the actual characters and just follow them around with the camera. It's certainly got better production values than
Speaking of which, the casting in this movie is just stellar.
Dude, So the only thing that's I think funny in hindsight is Joe Pesci getting cast as the strong man.
Yeah.
Joe Pesci's the thug, right? But after you see like Lethal Weapon and a few of the other ones where they basically turn him into a caricature of a mafioso, here he's the actual dude. He's one of the wise guys. He's basically Hendrix,
Nah,
except that
Hendrix
he's like,
doesn't have that much of a trigger issue.
but I mean, come on, he's the strong guy, right?
Gonna let him
He's
get
just-
away with that?
Yeah, he's just a foot too short, and he's got a chip on his shoulder, and he basically gets away with every murder except for one. So
Yeah.
because they eventually catch up with him over the Billy Bats thing, but then you've got Jimmy, which honestly, De Niro was perfectly cast, and it's great to see his character devolve. Because he starts out and you're like, this guy's in charge. Like, you could just tell he's dressed, his presence in the room. It's Robert De Niro. This is, it all makes sense. And then you see him unravel over the course of the movie, and basically just like because he's got all this money and he's making all of these people disappear and all this other stuff, he wants to disappear himself because that's the only way he's going to be safe. And so, he hides in a warehouse and he hides all his money and all this other stuff. He starts even offing his friends, and stuff like that. And so it was one of the things I got a little bit more from the trivia as well, is that, he just became so paranoid that, instead of ratting people out, he just made them disappear,
But then he also left their bodies very visible, like putting the guy in the meat haul truck. And so he froze. Like, there's no way that's not going to be found. They stopped.
Sure.
Like, maybe I missed it, but why did they stop like burying the bodies or having lye acid to dissolve the bodies and actually make them disappear instead of leaving them in the open in their car?
I'm not sure, but in real life, I think a lot of
message to who?
A lot of the people just disappeared. But in the movie, I think it's also it was a visual thing, right, for the movie. I don't know how true to life that was.
Sure, I feel like if you're trying to not get attention, don't leave a dead body.
I mean, it could have been, I really should just look up the character's name. I can't remember, but, Tommy, right? Joe Pesci's character is Tommy. Yeah. So it could have been just Tommy, in my opinion, is a psychopath, right? So, he starts off doing the right thing, but I think once he gets close to being made, he feels like he's untouchable, which is a big part of being made, which is why they got him for Billy Bats' murder, is that Billy Bats was untouchable. You got to just grin and bear it because he's giving you shit. He's busting your balls, whatever. Joe Pesci's character was still a nobody, even though he wasn't just a shoe shiner anymore. As far as Billy Bats' character was, like, not character, but as far as Billy Bats was concerned, you're a nobody because you're not made. So I can give you all the shit I want, And Tommy, basically just didn't. He didn't want the disrespect. And it keeps going. I mean, it was kind of the other thing, like the used car salesman or whatever the fuck his guy was, give me my money. And he's following around. He was, the Wigs. Thank you. He was following around Jimmy the whole time. And it's like, you're nobody. You're like not even a mobster. What makes you think you can give this guy shit and it's not going to catch up to you? Nobody's even going to come looking for your body when you disappear. Like, what makes you think you can just harass these mobsters about where's my money? Like, you say, please and thank you 3 times and move on. Like, unless you want to get whacked, like, you're basically asking for it at that point, like, so.
Just also fun. Like, it doesn't really go into detail with the ranks of the mob's organization, but just that, you have to be of pure blood to be a made guy. And if you're a made guy, you're like above everybody who's not made,
right?
But it is funny because
they changed that. So now only your dad has to have Italian blood. So
mom. I'm pretty sure it's the mother's.
Was it the mom? Yeah. So I remember thinking about that because that's how it works with Jews, right? Because you can tell who your mom is. It's a lot more difficult to do dad, but I think it's the other way for the mafioso. But and the reason why is because they actually, it's in the trivia again, but they kind of go into it, the fact that like Jimmy and Hill wouldn't have made it anyway because their dads were Irish or whatever, so even with the rule changes they still would have been on the outside, so
It is also what I think is funny is like how much De Niro's character is, when he's in the room, like even when he's in the room with Paul, who is a captain, as I understand it, he's pretty high up there. He still commands the room, basically. If he was of the right blood, he would for sure be like a very, But it's funny how these is it associates? Is that what it's called? People who are not made but are associated. How they can be almost like, because they're big earners, they can be more powerful than a lot of made guys, except they can't fuck with the made guy.
Right. And I think that was kind of Tommy's ultimate problem, is that Tommy felt like he shouldn't be getting shit, and Billy Bats, according to their social structure, could, so. But yeah, so the bit from the trivia is talks about they couldn't be made because they weren't full Italian descent. That rule was changed in 2000 by the Commission, the 5 New York City families. A man can now be made if his father is of Italian descent and his last name is Italian. So that's probably where it becomes, is like, you've got your father's last name because that's generally where that comes from, right? So that makes a little bit more sense. Whereas, like, yeah, with Jewish descent, your mother has to be Jewish, because my understanding anyway is, it's a whole lot easier to prove who your mother is genealogically than the other way. So
it's an orthodox rule, and even if they do feel like they know who the father is, sometimes that causes issues. I don't know.
Gotcha. So
this our whole segment here of a perfect movie. It is because you asked me, like, why is this a perfect movie? It's very subjective, right? To like each person, what is their perfect movie? And that's how I feel like we're doing it. We're presenting our perfect movies that I can find no faults with this movie. I love this movie. I think it's great. I love the story is good. The directing is good. The acting is amazing.
I mean, none of the stuff that we've said is actually a criticism of the movie. We're trying to just talking about the content of it, of like the whole general idea of mafia.
Right. Yeah, and but that's kind of where it is too, is like, you're presenting this movie, and we've had this argument in the chat a few times as well, right? There's a ton of movies that we love to death don't make the cut as perfect movies. And it may be a perfect movie for you, but if you brought this out in the light of day, you're going to get ridiculed, right? And Goodfellas, like that, you could go down every kind of list. It's in top 100 before you watch this movie before you die. It's got several quotes in the top 100. Like, I mean, Goodfellas is a good movie across space and time, right? Like, you compare this against everything, it is a really good movie, period. So, like, and that's kind of the idea. It's like, yes, perfect is subjective. Maybe we got some people in the chat that disagree, that sort of thing, but I haven't found any faults with it, so.
I also think it's fair to put forward a movie who's probably not, like, I would say Pitch Black, it's not a perfect movie, but it certainly was a good movie, and it might have been perfect for Alex, and that's fair. Right. Put forward that you might, then it also creates discussion right here, and that's good. Like, that's what we do here. We talk about it, we discuss. So if it was just, this is a great movie, and that was the show.
Yeah, so that was 2 weeks ago, right? So why didn't you bring up what your problems were with Pitch Black 2 weeks ago? Were you afraid? Like what? What? I don't remember anything. I don't remember anybody having any cross words. So
I think I even said I don't think this was a perfect movie. I thought, but what I did like was, like, the camera work wasn't really great. What they got out of their budget was great. The acting, especially the physical acting of Vin Diesel, I really liked. I focused on the positive things, but
that's not the point, though.
Yeah,
we know it's
go in
good.
with a negative
That's why
mindset.
We watched it. Yeah,
try to skewer it. Let's try to destroy it.
So what was bad?
What I didn't like, I don't know.
Yeah.
What didn't I like?
That's why it's a perfect movie, because you don't know.
I mean,
You
like,
didn't like it.
I don't
doesn't
remember
make it not
now. I
perfect
remember
either.
Goodfellas is not probably going to be my favorite movie ever, but I'd say like I'm not sure that the acting could have been improved. I'm not sure the cast could have been improved. Like there
Right.
was like the De Niro's character was offered to Al Pacino. Al Pacino turned it down and he regretted it. It's like I don't know if Pacino would have done better with it. So I think it's better. Like it is perfect as is for De Niro to have that character.
I think this might. I don't know if it's De Niro's best role, but it's very close.
He killed it. It may not need to be his best.
Really? Can we just choose better words? Knocked it out of the park. He killed it and 25 other people. What's wrong with you? No.
I did like the trivia of like I think it was Joe Pesci's mother who watched the movie. It was very good, but did you have to swear so much?
It's so perfect. Well, it's funny too because that was like the first bit of trivia that I wrote down. Was like I realized I was doing this with one of the other movies, and so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start doing this here. Fuck and its derivatives are used 321 times, an average of 2.04 per minute. And
the kind
Joe
of person
Pesci
that I
says
am,
about half of
like.
them.
I barely notice them.
Oh yeah, exactly.
They just they fly by. They're just part of vernacular.
It's like an adjective that you barely you don't really notice it, right? Like even in.
But I did enjoy the other more offensive language. The fact that they didn't shy away from it, I was good. If they had shied away from it, they would have suffered from it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so what was the other offensive language?
The one I don't want to be canceled.
Can you put it in the chat? I mean, I'll say it.
Will you?
No, I don't know. I don't remember.
Are we
what
more
you're
than
talking
10
about.
minutes in?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Put it in the chat anyway. Discord, whatever. I don't care. So, but yeah, no, I mean, yeah.
Would it be an N-word?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Can you believe that?
Well, okay. So it's probably an anecdote I shouldn't share, but let's just say that my grandmother comes from a generation where that is less stigmatized. And the first time that it jumped out to me that it was used was because he was using it as like an adjective for like a class of criminal, not necessarily like as slang about the race. And that was one of the stupid ways my grandfather always tried to justify it. It was like, no, they could be white. It doesn't matter. It's just a word. And I'm like, no, you can't say that shit. Like that is not okay.
I can get that depending on what it meant as you were growing up and learning how the word is used. I just like there was a guy.
I think certainly the origin matters in this case, though. Like so.
But there's the origin where it comes from in the world, and I think the origin as it mattered to the person as they were learning it.
Sure.
That I mean, it's just going to affect how they use and want to use it. But like the first time they said in the movie, like that I noticed at least was some guy's car got stolen, and he's like, "I need to make a phone call right now."
Oh yeah, and that was definitely a big one. But Henry actually says it earlier when he's talking to his wife about getting pinched
later. But yeah, it's like he's not going to go to jail because he's not one of them.
Well, yeah, not just that, but also that, you go to jail because you want to go to jail, which I thought was very telling, especially when he finally does get arrested. And he was already like, you were starting to see the strain in their relationship. So I took it. It was like, she's bawling her eyes out as much as anything because, that just sells it that he is trying to get away from her. And, when you hear him describe it, it was just some bad luck, like. The dude's brother's wife, is a typist for the FBI. Like, who would fucking know that?
Of all the fucking things,
right? Yeah. I also thought it was kind of fun to see the Tampa Zoo because I'm wondering if that is still like the Lowry Park Zoo or if there's something different there because it's like I've been to that zoo. It's not in the middle of fucking nowhere, at least not today. So that's another thing. Like there were a couple of times I'd be watching the movie and I'd be like, wait a minute, that's not. This movie is really old. That was a long time ago. It might have been. Yeah, like. It definitely, I mean, yeah, I think it came up to like 87 or something like that until you went into the witness protection program and that kicks off like the 90s, right? But
I think he went into witness protection in 80, but some of the they separated in 89 or something. This guy died in 87, so that kind of details.
I'm trying to see because this one doesn't have it, but one of the ones that I picked out was like, so the attorney they're talking to in like the last 10 minutes of the movie. I didn't know that until I was watching it because I had read the trivia, and finally I'm like, Jesus, where is this part? They cast the exact same attorney as talked to Henry Hill as the guy who's talking to Liotta and his, and his wife, basically to get into witness protection. So that lawyer that is like, yeah, no, if you don't do this, you're gonna get dead, because if they can't get to him, they're gonna get to you. Like, he's an actual attorney, and he's just playing his own part. Like, they just hired him to reenact his role. So like, that's another one where it's like, yeah, okay, so it's not a documentary, but they had actual mobsters play extras at times. And one of the trivia parts that I thought was interesting is like, no one knows how they got paid. They just like came on the movie, refused to give a real name or social security number, and then left. And so there was some theoretically back deal where they got paid, and then they had like the U.S. attorney. I think a couple of the cops were like actual like FBI or cops that were involved, but I mean, they're basically extras, even as far as the movie's concerned. Like, most of the time, like if there's anything with the cops, like they bust you and move on, or there's the one like 30-second search of the house scene or something like that. But
the amount of people who, like, because like I watched this Goodfellas a lot of times, and I watched Sopranos twice, and I did a rewatch of Sopranos within the last few years, so I can still remember a lot of the actors this time around when I watched Goodfellas again. The amount of people in Goodfellas that are also in Sopranos, like, there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah. Well, the problem was in the 80s, there used to be a lot more of Italian Americans, and then they all got whacked or went to jail, which is, it's kind of the outcome of this, right? Like, especially with Jimmy knocking off a bunch of people. Like, by the time this movie gets made or like comes out and everything like that, or no, is this one 20? I don't know. By the time like Henry kind of comes out, it's like Jimmy's in jail, Polly's in jail, Henry has been in witness protection, and just about everybody else is dead or probably in jail. Was like the trivia. I forget what year that was by, but it was like, by the time it becomes a problem, they're like super in federal penitentiary, probably not eating steaks and lobster like the fucking movie. Like, that was another thing I couldn't believe, is they basically have a dorm room that they're sharing, and it was like, compare this to like Shawshank Redemption. I know, fiction, but still, like, compare this to like another prison movie, or even what you think about the prisons today. Huh? Yeah, I know, right? But that's fucking crazy. Like, how do you hide that level of corruption, right? Like, how do you even, like, who are they paying what kind of money? The dude has got drugs on the table in plain sight, and the cops just like walk away.
And especially back then, right? It was either you were on the take, or you were too scared. Like, even if you were like, you couldn't really say anything.
Turn them in, yeah, because that, I mean, they kind of mentioned that in the movie too. But yeah, it blows my mind, right? Like,
another great movie that kind of illustrates a lot of that, which I also think it might be a perfect movie for me, but I like these gangster movies, is the American Gangster with the Denzel, right? Yeah. And the guy from Gladiator, which I cannot remember his name right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's not super specific. Are we talking about Joaquin,
the main guy from Gladiator, Russell Crowe?
You're right.
And yeah, this is Denzel within the main role. American Gangster is also a really fantastic movie, and there's like it deals with this whole unraveling of like police corruption as well. It's like kind of a subplot in the movie.
I gotta say, I haven't seen all of his movies, but I'm not sure I've seen a Denzel Washington movie that I haven't liked. Right? Like, he crosses genres. He does a lot of very visceral, like, kind of down to earth stuff. Even the fiction, right? It's usually down to earth. Like, Book of Eli is one of the more outlandish ones, and it's not like it's unplausible. It's just movie. Oh yeah, it's just post-apocalyptic. Fallen, obviously, like, there's supernatural forces involved with that, because time is on your side. Just had to say it. I didn't know he was in Virtuosity, so maybe I need to rewatch that. But I mean, talk about a guy with
movie. I've never heard of this, and there's a lot of people in this.
What, American Gangster?
It's a really
Yeah.
great movie. I would recommend it to
Denzel,
anyone.
Russell Crowe, Chiwetel Ejiofor. I don't remember how to pronounce his name. Whatever. Josh Brolin. Idris
Gooding.
Elba's in this. Carla Gugino.
Oh, wow.
It's like
What's
Armando
crazy
Sante.
about this is like a lot of these guys. Let's see, when did this come out?
2007.
2007. So,
How did I miss this?
right? Because a lot of these guys hadn't necessarily hit their flagship role that you would think in your mind, you know.
I guess so.
But
it was like just
but
wow.
I'm actually, I thought I had seen this, but now I'm not sure. So
I would really like it's if you think good, if you like good, even if you found Goodfellas nauseating, I get where you're coming from. But if you watched it and enjoyed it, I'm positive you would enjoy this as well. It's a very good movie.
It's certainly got, you know, an A-list cast to go around the block, like, you know. So, but and it's like it's not typecasting for a lot of these guys, right? Like, kind of depending. I'd have to kind of see it, but it's like, you know, I might butcher the pronunciation, but Chiwetel, or I'm sorry, I know. How you don't know either. Okay, so
no, I just guessed.
I'd have to hear it, but I always call him the operative because of Serenity, right? And so and also because he's in several other movies where like he takes on that kind of role. It was the same thing with crap. I can't even remember the character's name, so I'm just completely useless right now.
I think when I remember him the most from his 12 Years as a Slave, that movie just was really like, it really hit me.
Yeah, another one that it's like, yeah, I'm not really watching that, and I think it came out like
it was only a couple years ago,
right? Yeah, so it's like it's not exactly kid friendly enough. Like we're gonna have to go through all that. We're gonna teach him, you know, the nitty gritty history, but right now his existential hurdle is realizing that all of the people around him will one day die. So you know, we'll add.
Should I still deal with that
later.
Yeah, no, I don't think that fear ever goes away.
Yeah, I'm smack dab in the existential of like, oh, I'm in my mid-30s. Jesus Christ, I'm dying right now. Like, what are we doing here? I'm sitting here fucking wasting time on a podcast when I should be out doing. God, I don't know what I would even do with my life. I'm a grown-ass adult, and I don't know what I would do if I had unlimited time and money. What would I do? What's my?
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I guess
I just don't want it to end.
My eulogy will be like, well, he wasted every Saturday on his podcasts, and then he wasted every other moment either playing video games or looking at memes on Reddit. What a life well lived. And then hopefully my boys in the back like fucking legend, you know, because my life is a meme. So, you know. Yeah.
I mean, I was about to say, Justin, are you me? But I mean, you are one up me because you know you actually have a family, so you know you're doing better.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't think that. I mean, it's got me past the Darwin Awards, right? But I'm not sure I'm adding anymore. Like, you know, asked me 10 years ago, and it's like I've got to get married and have kids because I like my family. I got a strong family name. Let's like do the things and whatever. And now I'm just like. I don't know. How have I not known this place has been on fire? They wrote songs about it in the 80s. The world's been burning since. Well, how did I not know it was so bad? Like, what was I thinking? And what am I doing about it? You know, so that's probably why we argue about politics a lot more lately is because I'm starting to get back into that and think I can make a difference, which is silly, you know, because I've already been down that road. So now we're just insane as well as useless.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I think about that a lot, and especially I discuss it with my roommate sometimes, and it's just like I feel like especially in where I am in my life, I don't feel like I can do anything about these things that I think are a problem, just because I have some like I don't want to get into like personal shit, but like I have a lot of my own shit that that needs to be sorted before I could do the world changing, even try to do the world changing shit.
This isn't what we're talking about. So I'm going to drop this one dad nugget of wisdom, and then we can move on or whatever. The people that are enacting the changes don't ask those questions. I think that's the difference. You don't see Bill Gates wake up in the morning and be like, shit, I don't think I should be making these decisions. He's just fucking throwing elbows. Zuckerberg didn't ask. And in fact, he'd say, fuck you. Musk isn't asking. Like, and I'm not saying like these are all the policy drivers. They're just the people that come to mind. pick your favorite politician, especially the douchebag ones. Do you really think they got up in the morning and be like, what are my values today before I go and start voting on policy?
I wish they would, maybe.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, but I think that's the difference, right? Is like people that are making these decisions aren't asking for permission. And if you get out of the mindset of permission, like, yeah, do a good job. Like, I'm not saying like, let's add a bunch of extra chaos to the world and that sort of thing. Have conviction, have values, but that's not the same thing as like, do I really have the authority to like make this decision? Yeah, fuck that guy. He doesn't have the authority, and who's stopping him? Like, so anyway, let's talk about the movie. Or did we just decide it's perfect?
We went on a lot of tangents here. What I was trying to bring up with American Gangster and the whole people were afraid to say something is something that's, I don't want to spoil too much because you guys haven't watched that, and I really think you should. But very early on in the movie, one of the main characters, who was a cop, finds a lot of money, and he turns it in because he's basically uncorruptible. He turns it in, and he becomes a pariah in the police department because he turned in so much money. So he says he's not corruptible.
Gotcha. Because virtue signaling, and everybody's like, well, shit, fuck this guy because he's gonna rat on me. So that makes a measure of sense. I wish it didn't, but so it's a little bit of a subject change. But you said that you like gangster movies. So what is it about the genre that like attracts you? What is it about these movies that you liked?
I'm not sure. Okay. Almost probably maybe the melodrama of it all. I don't know. It's not so much the life. I mean, I find the whole idea very, very scary, actually, living that life that these people live. But I don't know. It makes for some really great story. Like, I love Sopranos, this American Gangster, Goodfellas, Casino, like all these movies. And the point of almost all these movies is crime does not pay. And I agree with that message. I'm not
That's
interested
because they're being written by the guy who just had a life paid for by crime,
right,
and got caught. And part of his plea deal is to tell the kids, don't do drugs, stay in school. I mean, because that was one of the things that I was thinking, like either late last night or early this morning, kind of like a shower thought, where it's like, Jesus Christ, like Henry Hill's life is fucking exhausting, at least portrayed in the movie. So again, probably suffering from like condensed timeline. But think about it. He's practically got two families because he's got a wife and like a full-time mistress, right? And they make it seem like he basically wakes up from his wife and goes to his mistress, who's later helping him run his drug business. He's running all these stupid ass errands, even for Jimmy, like go buy guns from these guys, go buy drugs from those guys. Like think about the day that he gets caught, right? And he's basically giving you a timeline of this one day. And so again, is the day the exception? In between all of this, because he's Italian, because he's in with the family, he's got to make a full Italian meal, and he's got his brother in charge of this. And I'm like, where the
Don't let it stick, keep stirring.
Yeah, right. Where the fuck does he get the energy? I'm like, right, cocaine. Cocaine's where he gets the energy.
Yeah, how many hits did he have in that one day? Probably like 8 lines of coke. It's just
Right.
So he picks up his brother at the hospital, and he looks terrible. And he's like, I just almost got into an accident, which was true. But it's like, no, you need some Valium. And then an hour later, he's doing more coke.
Right. Yeah. So I was just like all of this stuff, and then you get from the trivia, like, so they paid him $550K for consulting on the movie, and he's like, yeah, this is chump change. What the and this is $1980, right? Like, this isn't like even today dollars, where it's like, we've had another twice the inflation and whatever else, where it's just like, this dude is like scoffing at $500K. Like, $500K, I'd take a break from my job for a few months, like, let alone if I were in fucking witness protection, like I'd be scoffing at that money. But that's the thing. He talks about blowing tens of thousands of dollars in a weekend just gambling, let alone all the other shit that he's doing. Like, they eat the way that they eat because comparatively, compared to all the other shit that they're doing, it's not pennies. They find $100 in the couch cushions, because of the scale that they're working with. So I don't know. All of that stuff was crazy. But yeah, thinking about his one busy day and be like, I got 2 kids as well. And where would I have the energy and wherewithal to run a criminal enterprise?
Do you have a full-time nanny that's also dealing your
That's
drugs for
true.
you.
Yeah, right. Or getting me busted because she
Right.
won't follow fucking operational security. Like, duh.
I did kind of like how that came full circle in the
Right.
beginning. It's like this guy would never have a phone in his house. I was like, how are you doing anything? Like he would make people go to the phone's house. Oh, I get it. And it came
Right.
full circle of don't say anything on your own phone line.
Yeah, that's fair too. Yeah, I thought, yeah, there were some things where, like, some of the early stuff did kind of wrap around, and like Paulie cutting him off because he gets busted for drugs, and
Mhm.
he knows that he's been doing drugs. So he's like, here's like 10 grand, and now I've got to cut you off.
$3,200.
Yeah. Well, I
Which
thought
actually was
3,200 was like what he got from Jimmy or something.
No,
No,
that's
it was
what
from
Paulie
Paulie.
gives him.
Okay, yeah.
And which is
So-
also what a point I wanted to bring up, because he's like he does spend a lot. Like they have a crazy churn of money, right? But it's also funny, like when shit hits the fan for him, he hits Paulie, he gets 3,200. That's nothing compared to what he's churning, right? Then he goes like, okay,
That was
we have
literally pocket change.
yeah,
Right.
That what he the drugs that's the safe stash is like $60,000.
Right, $60,000 worth of drugs.
And I think that's all we had, because like
Right.
they churn so much money, so they make insane amounts, but they just throw it away, like they just keep
Right. Well, and that's another thing too. It's like whenever anybody talk about like crazy amounts of money, it's like I think the question that should ride that, especially, not to really get political, but it's getting there anyway. But if you're talking about taxes and shit like that, think about the fucking waste. They waste more money than this shit, right? You're seeing the mega yachts, but what you're not, it's like, okay, well, I spent $2 billion on that boat. What you're not thinking about is the like $5 million a year they're spending in upkeep, or the millions of dollars they're spending in staff, or whatever else. And I mean, that's just business by today's standards. But like, the gangsters, like, think about the money they're wasting. Like, the dude has a sack of guns. Okay, he's so negligent with the firearms, he has them in a sack because he's probably handles them that much and it's camouflaged, whatever. But he's bitching about how Jimmy won't pay him for the guns. Those guns didn't cost $3,200. So what are you bitching about? $3,200 is simultaneously pocket change and the like $1,000 worth of guns. I'm gonna bitch about not getting my money. Like, bitch, check your shoe. You've got $100 bill in your shoe that covered the guns. Like, Jimmy probably gave you $1,000 to say thank you for running guns for me. Please don't fuck up because the drugs are making your brain mush. Go get me real guns. Like, how many times do you see wads of $100 bills where it's like, that's got to be 10 grand right there. And
he was giving out $20 to like for almost every drink in the 50s.
Right. Yeah, just nuts. I mean, in that case, he was almost legitimate because he's running that club and whatever, right? In theory, and certainly in a couple of them, he runs clubs and then he starts getting involved with like the real shit, but yeah, it's crazy. So, and then even still with like the money that they're throwing around, the $6 million heist that they had, that was like more money than they could ever hope to dream of.
That was the biggest heist of the time, right?
No, that would be like 3 years worth of savings.
Right. Well, and then split it between 8 guys. It's like, well, you're not even getting $1 million each, right? Like, so that was one of the things I had a tough time reconciling, but just kind of was like, yeah, whatever, So, but they're all like, oh, this is the biggest score we've ever pulled. I mean, that part is true, but like, if you just didn't fuck it off with the bookies for 6 months, you'd have saved that much money,
That's also a very recurring theme in The Sopranos, the main guy, where it's like, he's a big boss. He gets a lot of money in just from everybody else doing crime because they all have to pay tribute. But he just churns through it, like, and it's but now, we can afford everything. Then he's on a bad streak in gambling. We have to know. Give me more money, and he gets in a bad mood and stuff like
right.
And just the way that these people live is, which I also think, like, in one thing when you watch the movies, like, oh, look at all this money and like, oh, they're like this extravagant lifestyle, but it just seems fucking exhausting,
right?
Like, and also, like, really,
I definitely would nap more if I was making that kind of money. So,
But
I
you're
mean,
also
drugs
like,
might help.
can you
But
even trust that? To touch something Alex said earlier with like, oh, like everybody watch themselves for everybody, and if there's a problem, the mob will take care of it, like kind of in the community, like locally. But on the
right.
same hand, if you're associated in any way, like you would be worried to get fucking killed all the time.
Right. Well, and it's funny you bring that up because it sort of blurred in with like when do you have the time part two, because like when he's having his first problems with his wife, he's been out for 2 weeks and whatever, they're partying, and then it's like, come out tonight, we'll be out till like 2 or 4 in the morning, and it's again like, when the fuck do you sleep? And if you're somebody like Tommy, where the fuck do you sleep? Because somebody's got to be gunning for you. Like, sure, you got people, you're part of the outfit, but you're telling me there isn't a rival crew or another group somewhere that's like, we want to catch this fucker alone or something like that, or like what they did, right, where they had to pretend that he was made so that they could get to him, so they could shoot him at the end, and it's just like, you got
Maybe
to
they
be
had
paranoid
rules.
as fuck all the time.
So, like, I don't know anything about how they actually work, and I don't think they said anything in the movie of, like, do they have rules of you're not allowed to kill someone in their own home?
Well, they certainly didn't follow that by the end. Like, all the rules had gone out the window, but we don't see a lot of that until, like, so Billy Bats gets taken out way early, and he's taken out in public, basically, because, he's in the bar. You see, like, a guy get shot on the street. That was the first one where it's like they were at the barber shop, right? They rough up the guy in Florida, but they took him to the zoo. Like, you don't really see a lot of killing until the end, even though, like,
but,
it's happening.
People being killed in cars or in shops or as you're walking into a room about to get made, like, what all of that, they never really like, they did not go into someone's home where they knew they were sleeping and then kill them there. Well, no, except the black guy.
Well, and that's what I was saying. Like, by the end, I feel like the rules come off a little bit. But yeah, Samuel L. Jackson gets blasted. That was another surprise. I didn't realize he was in this movie. But yeah, so he gets blasted, and so again, operational security. You got one job, man. We hired you to steal the truck and take it to a junkyard, and you got high and slept with your girlfriend, and by then the cops were all over it. So yeah, just kind of funny. Like, in hindsight, criminals are dumb, right? But they got away with it for 30 years. So is that really the moral of the story? Like,
I think, like Cody also said here in the chat, is it get portrayed as looking fun, at least for a while, the whole lifestyle. But I mean, if you just think, like, if you actually look at, like, if you think about it for a minute, it doesn't really seem, sure, it's great that to have a lot of money and be respected and powerful, but the lifestyle, it's just like I said, it's just like, if you dig down in a little bit, it's all exhausting. It's all, you got to be like stressed all the time. Like, I wouldn't want to live like that.
Right.
That's why the cocaine.
Yeah, right. Like, the only parts that look even remotely fun to me, and not that I do drugs or drink all that much, is the party scenes, right? Like, whatever. Hanging out, telling jokes. What, I'm funny to you? I had to bring it up at least one time. Like, how am I funny? Am I like a clown? Am I funny to you? Since he's not here for me to. Yeah, right. So, like, stuff like that, they're hanging around, having a good time. Like, your downtime, fine, yeah, but yeah, and again, maybe they weren't worried about anything because the cops are on the take. Who's going to come get them? And that's
a good
when
example,
the FBI starts to get involved, because the cops are on the take. So
a good example of the whole kind of like how, oh yeah, chummy, goody, haha, breaking balls, whatever, but how we still kind of like can be a little stressed at all and be scared, like the spider scene, right? Where it's just like, oh, he busting his balls, and the spider's been fed up. He's got his foot shot, so he's like, yeah, why don't you go fuck yourself, okay? And then and they bust his balls. They're like, well, you're gonna take that, and he fucking shoots him.
Right. Well, and that's where like, even from their standards, like, Tommy was a little bit of a psychopath of some kind.
Yeah, he was definitely a liability. Like, he just killed a kid that was basically one of their own.
Right.
And
I mean, again, like, not justifying it or anything, but you got to think from the kid's perspective. Like, two things come to mind. First of all, why the fuck are you mouthing off to this guy? You probably heard the stories where he's killed him. Who's protecting you? Like, it's a protection racket, guys. It does business. That you need protection from the other guys that are going to kill you. And then at the same time, he's a fucking kid. He's probably just busting his balls because A, he got shot, and B, he's seen all the other guys do it. But what he doesn't have and he doesn't realize is the implicit respect between, like, even if Jimmy was busting your balls, he's got the longevity and the respect and the relationship to do it. He's got the rapport. Whereas like Spider's fucking nobody, and it's the same thing with the wig guy. Like, he's busting Jimmy's balls. Like, if one of the other guys had come to Jimmy's like, yeah, of course, why do you even got to ask? But the wig guy comes up and busting Jimmy's balls. Like, what do you think's going to happen here? You think Jimmy's just going to roll over and give it to you? The fact that you asked is probably now just put him to the point that you're never going to get your money. Like the fact that you keep harassing him, like, you were going to get it on his timeline. But yeah, with the Spider Kid, like, that was the one where, like, you see their reaction and you kind of realize it too. It's like, Tommy's fucking nuts, like, he's just shooting and killing whoever the fuck he wants. That was his power. That was, he never seemed to care about the money. Like, it's not like he was a pauper, right? He's got his suits, he's got his girls, cars, whatever. But for Henry, it seems like it's money, gambling, drugs. For Jimmy, again, you don't necessarily see anything, but he's kind of in between both. Like, he's involved with some of the murders. He's running, he doesn't mind running drugs later in the movie either. For Tommy, it's killing, like, he gets involved with some of the other stuff incidentally, and then he's their cleanup guy, like, so. But anyway, just interesting. It's an interesting window into it. Sorry, go ahead.
A fair observation that was made, and I just saw in chat, is like the part that does a very good job of showing a more modern version of that, like the life and the extreme stress that comes with that,
and the corruption on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, the part does one.
I think we floated that as putting that on the list. It probably should be there. I've only seen it once. The Departed.
Oh yeah.
I've seen it once a really long time ago.
It once too, but what is it, your period? So, yeah. Is that also maybe yes, maybe no, maybe go fuck yourself? Like, there's some pretty good lines.
Yeah, might be. Yeah. That's from that movie.
Yeah.
Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe go fuck yourself. That's Marky Mark, right?
Oh my goodness! Apparently, that's also a book. So.
It seems like maybe a lot of these gangster movies are based on books. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, well, for the people that survived to write them, I guess, So
I don't know what attracts me to gangster movies and these mob movies and stuff, but I really like them. I don't know if I'm deficient, if I want to be a criminal, but I'm just scared or something. But
well, the thing that comes to my mind, right, is that I like visceral movies, right? I don't necessarily like, random because it's an anecdote from this morning, but flipping through Netflix for way too long, settled on American Ninja, Chris Farley, right? And they shoot a guy in the thing, but they like pan the camera away, right? And then they shoot him and they turn it into a sketch and it's comical and whatever. A man has died, maybe we shouldn't make light of some of these things, especially if we want to be a progressive, nonviolent society that we keep pretending to be. But like, there's something about like not pulling the punches sometimes, where it's just like, no, this shit happens. And that, people are like, oh, but it's rated R. Yeah, fucker, step outside your house. It is rated R. The FCC isn't going to come and give me a ticket because I said fuck on the street. They'll cancel my YouTube show, but that this shit isn't going to happen out on the street. You can't run your mouth. You can't be a keyboard warrior. You can't just whatever. Like if you fuck off somebody and hurt their feelings, you might get lucky and just get punched in the nose, but I don't know. It just, all of that stuff, I think for me, any of the attractiveness begins and ends with the fact that it's real, right? Like I can see Goodfellas, I can see some of the appeal and stuff like that because like these are true stories. And then you get the whole like true crime crowd, right? Where they get fascinated with that. Some of that's mystery where they just want to figure out who done it and how they got away with it or whatever. You get some of that subset, but I don't particularly enjoy
the whole true crime thing, which I get a lot less than the whole like mob movies. Love them, But the whole true crime, like she's into podcasts and examinations of the cases.
I'm not very interested in the true crime. I know that there's plenty of people who are, but I love noir. That's like just the fictional version of it a lot of the time. But like I love noir, makes me so happy. Like Chinatown is an amazing movie, but a true crime thing or anything that gets more gritty like that, just like meh.
Well, and noir is like half a step, if even that, away from like Goodfellas, right? Like I almost called Goodfellas noir, and like it almost starts out noir, right?
Yeah. But so I was wondering about that because like
photography isn't quite there, so.
And something about the tone is a little bit different, but I think it's like noir starts with a damaged character, right? Like there's the PI with a drinking problem and a bad past, something or other is broken. But like the gangster of this movie, at least like this was fantastic. This was a success for him to get into the crimes. I think that tonal difference is why something about it, but I kept going into this movie wondering like, is this going to be noir and I'm going to like it? Because otherwise, like I watched The Godfather and I was bored. I was like, I don't think I want.
This is way different than The Godfather, like in terms of both tone and pacing and everything.
The pacing was definitely different, which was a good thing.
Godfather is more like dealing with somebody like Paulie or even the guy above Paulie, right? Whereas like Goodfellas is like, you're the street guy. You are like we talked about the terminology a little bit, right? He's one step above the general thugs and whatever else, right? Like even Tommy practically is a thug. He's just the high class, fixer type or whatever. But, like at the end of the day, these guys were nobodies, right? Which is why Jimmy wanted Tommy to be made so much by the end of the movie, is because he felt like that would give him protection, right? Henry talks about that in the movie and stuff like that, because these guys are nobody. If they cross the wrong guy, they're just gone. But yeah, Godfather is, the aristocracy, right? They're the actual.
You actually get to see the meeting of the five families in The Godfather, for example, of all the heads of the crime families. But I mean, I think it's definitely. I mean, they're both like they're both mob movies. But they're very different movies. I mean, if you were to watch a movie that's more Goodfellas and less Godfather from the same era, it's like Casino,
which I haven't seen.
Which is the other De Niro movie from that era that's like held very high.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's like I don't have much experience with this gangster movie genre, but it is so close to noir. But like, there's something that's just not quite hitting it. I got much more interested when they started becoming damaged.
Right.
When things start like falling apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, but there was something when he was a kid and he was like doing all of these things and he was like being a good little associate and go run and take care of this guy who had his hand blown off, but don't waste all the aprons on it because you just wasted 8 aprons on the guy.
Right.
It was invigorating. It was fun to watch, but I don't know why it just doesn't give me the same happiness that noir does.
Interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I mean I enjoy the genre, but I wouldn't say that I go out and watch a bunch of movies. Like, it's interesting watching Goodfellas, because even Goodfellas, like thinking about it in the context in the timeline, is actually further down the road than like we're talking about 30 years, right? Like I keep mentioning how these guys, he basically started out in the 50s and just whatever. There's another 30 years before that where you had Al Capone and all of those guys, right? And so like one of the other gangster movies that comes to mind that I kind of enjoyed is like Gangs of New York, right? Because you get
amazing movie also. I really loved that.
Both sides of this, but you get a little bit more from like the FBI side again. And so I was thinking that too, like, you can see their apparatus kind of like, evolve over time and all this other stuff. It's like, shit, they've been doing this for a long time. They just must have sucked at it or something. Because, if you take Al Capone, he gets busted on tax evasion, right? At no point did they catch him in the act per se, and so also, you got all his gangs. You got the St. Valentine's Day Massacre is another one where it's like basically everybody got away, and half the theories think the cops literally were the ones in on it anyway, doing the shooting, And so you got all of this stuff for decades. But yeah, like, so gangster movies, Goodfellas, obviously we're talking about 60s to 80s, but then you've got Gangs of New York, which is like 20s and 30s, right? So
the whole Al Capone thing just reminded me of another movie, which like it's probably on my perfect movie list. Now that I think about it, is the Untouchables.
Hmm.
I had to
Which
watch
is
that in
also-
school. I don't remember if I liked it.
Which is also De Niro's also in that, and what's it? Kevin Costner's the main guy, right? De Niro's plays Al Capone.
Oh, well, that's how much I remember.
Right.
On another gangster
Untouchables is
movie,
good.
it's Russian instead of Italian, but Eastern Promises was really good.
You've mentioned
Amazing
that twice,
movie.
right?
Also,
So,
man, I
Yeah,
just love all these movies. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just like.
Eastern Promises
What's
is one of
the,
the ones that it does not pull any punches. It is very visceral and also personal.
yeah.
And Viggo Mortensen is amazing.
Yeah.
And Danish. So, you know,
And I think
got a special place in my heart because
Just because he's Danish.
Because he's from my neck of the woods, Diamond. There's a little nationalist in here somehow. I don't know why.
yeah.
We
I'm
love
not
to
sure.
see Danes do well out in the big world.
Yeah. And I think this one's quite a bit different than from the theme, but again, still kind of adjacent, but like Last Man Standing, Bruce Willis and Christopher Walken, I think is the one that I'm thinking of, because Christopher Walken is like the scary Tommy character where he's like the fixer that gets called in at the end, I think. He might be in another movie similar to this, but yeah, if you haven't seen that, I think it's great. So
I've actually never heard of this one.
yeah, so I mean, here's the two sentences, right? A drifting gunslinger for hire finds himself in the middle of an ongoing war between the Irish and Italian mafia in a Prohibition era ghost town. So it's kind of like, I mean, it's the Prohibition era, right? So that sets the stage, but it's also kind of like a Western, but it's not like, you know, revolvers and stuff. It's definitely more 20s, 30s.
Actually based on
aesthetic.
a samurai movie.
Yeah.
Last Man Standing.
I can see
yeah.
here.
Based on Yojimbo by Akira Kurosawa.
Which is
Right.
funny because a lot of the great westerns are based on like samurai movies I've seen.
Yeah, super interesting that that's the case. It's either shootout at the OK Corral or some events leading up to it, or you know, seven samurai for 7 rides, or what's the other one? You know, because they're like seven brothers, like that's literally again another riff, isn't it? So oh my goodness. See, we've turned this podcast into a movie podcast, and you guys are like, we haven't ever seen movies. I'm just kidding.
Broadening horizons.
I was like, we're complimenting each other's, you know, tastes here, because otherwise the directors seem like Terminator and Aliens and, you know, likes noir movies or something. And now she's like, ooh, gangster movies. These might be fun.
Maybe.
So.
I don't know. We'll see. I think I have to give the genre a fair shot, and I haven't yet. Not really.
American Gangster should be one of the next ones you watch, which is also more new. And I just love that movie. I think I might watch it tonight.
Yeah.
Does Training Day count as a gangster movie?
Not so much a gangster movie, but it's in that sphere, right? It's corrupt police instead, right?
I feel like it's connected to The Departed, and The Departed is connected to the gangster movies, but it's like on a spectrum of stuff. I don't know. Also, a movie I have not seen, and I don't want to count how many years.
Which one was this?
Training Day.
I'm not sure I've seen that.
Also
Denzel Washington, though, right? Yeah.
Ethan Hawke.
It's been on my short list, but it's just one of those. Again, I don't necessarily get into the crime, and then you know the last couple of years, like I was just looking at Netflix, and it's like, oh my God, there's so much I'm behind on that's even worse than I thought, you know. But yeah, like some of those are great. You know, thinking about it, like I think why I like Last Man Standing more, even though it kind of is adjacent to some of the genre we're saying, I think part of the adjacency is because it's much more of an action gunslinger movie than it is a crime movie, right? Like certainly the crime is part of the backdrop, you know, almost like it's setting up the plot. It's part of what's going on, but like the movie itself is like, you know, you were following around a gunslinger getting into gunfights. That's what Bruce Willis is doing. We're shooting a lot of people, not necessarily making them disappear in the middle of the night and whatever else, like you've got with Goodfellas and whatnot. Whereas like Goodfellas is definitely like the whole movie's the crime. It's all the crime, you know? So, but
the best Western movie I can think of touching on that is probably
good.
Tombstone.
Okay. I mean, you don't get a lot of people arguing about Tombstone.
Yeah.
As we're talking
I mean,
about Val Kilmer, etc., right? That Tombstone. So we had this discussion last time.
We did? Yeah, probably.
Well,
was some
because
discussion.
I thought there was like a more updated version of Tombstone. Maybe, I mean, there's like a Once Upon a Time in Tombstone coming out this year, I guess, or did come out this year.
The Val Kilmer one.
I know. I'll be your Huckleberry. I get it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, that is. I don't know. I don't know if it's perfect.
Yeah, I remember. Was
it
it you who said that, Justin? How
What?
it's in Tombstone? How it's like it's really cool, or is it Alex? It was one of you. I think it was one of you. Like how Val Kilmer's character is like kind of portrayed as frail and weak through the whole movie, and he's got this big rep, and he's like, okay, you really want to draw, and everybody's scared of him. But then when we get to it, and we draw, he is as amazing as his reputation says. He is just like the greatest gunslinger. I think one of you touched on that when we talked about that.
Sounds like something Justin was saying about True Grit, not about Tombstone.
Yeah, and that definitely was part of it too. Was like, yeah, because when you meet the guy, he's basically Assad. He's just a drunken hobo, whatever. But yeah, like by the end, he kind of lives up to his legend. But I mean, come on, "Fill your hands, you son of a bitch" is one of the greatest lines in movies ever. So it's really hard to compare to some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill, but.
It's also just it comes from a great actor. It's a great delivery as well. Like the whole scene, like it's "Fill your hands, son of a bitch."
Like, because we're talking about the Duke compared to
"Fill your hands, you son of a bitch."
Okay. Yeah.
So, not that Snipe and his delivery was not great. Of some motherfuckers always trying to ice skate uphill.
Aren't they remaking Blade? Are they doing it with the Mahershala Ali?
They are remaking Blade in the MCU even, I believe.
And I feel like I've heard that rumor that it was like, if they're going to remake it, it's going to be an MCU thing. But
I mean, we even know who's going to play Blade.
I also love Wesley Snipes. I wish he didn't do the whole, tax evasion thing, but he was pretty good in Coming to America, so the second one. Because it's Coming to America.
I know that it came out. I haven't seen it. I watched the first one a long time ago.
Well, he comes on the screen. The wife's like, "You know who that is?" And I'm like, "I mean, he looks really familiar." She's like, "It's fucking Wesley Snipes." I'm like, "He's lost a lot of weight, so it was kind of hard to tell." I'm sorry. It's also I'm not used to seeing him be like a goofball. Really, he's usually a little bit more dour and stuff. But
they're making play with the. I mean, I can't say his name. Marshamal Al-Sabas Ali, or something.
Wow, dude.
Link who he is. You'll recognize him on his.
We're not very good at pronouncing names, right?
Shit.
Mahershala Ali. Mahershala Ali. I don't know.
Mahershala Ali.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is like you're putting an entire extra syllable in there.
I think his real name is longer, and he shortened it down because of Hollywood.
Right. Oh, that's fair. So maybe in Danish land, he's getting the full name. But I saw pictures, and I'm like, "You're sure this isn't this?" Oh yeah, he's different, but I mean, he kind of looks like a younger Wesley Snipes a little bit. Maybe it's the sunglasses. I don't know.
Yeah, and he's a really good actor. So depending on what else they do, he would do a very good job in it. I wonder if they'll keep that line in there.
I've actually seen looking at his.
They won't, but
looking at his movies, I've actually seen him in a fair few things, and he was pretty good from what I remember most things. But the standout movie for me that he was in is The Green Book with
I've not seen,
which is a really good movie.
He was Uncle Aaron in Into the Spider-Verse. Apparently, he was in the Hunger Games, so I gotta go rewatch that at some point.
He was?
So, yeah, he was Boggs.
Who the?
I have no idea, my dude. I'm just trying to call out the ones that it's like I should have recognized this guy from. He was in Predators.
In Hunger Games, it's the guy who gives her that device that can see where all the traps are in the last Hunger Games when they're attacking the city.
Oh, the third one.
Yeah.
Okay, not seen that.
Mockingjay.
He's also in. He's also in. Well, the third one's actually the third and fourth one, right?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. The one that jumped the shark, the one that was like, we've led up to this moment and we're not going to be able to deliver. So,
Have you read the books?
That's how the books
I don't
are,
think I need to, but I think in this case I saw the movies first, so I'm like, I'm not even going to waste time with the books. Whereas like I saw Divergent, and then I think I had a coworker tell me go actually read the books, and then it was like even worse, and I was like, no, why? Like, why do you like this?
As I understand it, the books are actually pretty good, but the ending
up until the third one.
Yeah,
for the Hunger
right,
Games.
and that's a
very divisive opinion, though. There is a lot of people who also like the third book.
That's fine.
I actually haven't read them. I
disagree with a lot of people, Andreas, Mr. New Canon. Like, let's not start worrying about what other people's opinions are.
Why are you saying new canon? It's just canon.
Yeah. When your third book, like your first book mostly follows one character, your second book mostly follows the other character, the third one we're going to try and do both perspectives, and then your main character is going to die.
The prequel got penned.
Why?
Was that
Divergent. Sorry, spoilers.
I've not read, not watched.
Yeah. So Divergent, like the Divergent and the Mockingjay stuff, like those kind of tickle me on 2 points because they're both post-apocalyptic, which is kind of my jam. And then also you get a little bit of The Giver, which again, The Giver is kind of like post-societal anyway, right? And so you get these things where it's like you get a little bit of Brave New World, or you get a little bit of The Giver, or you get a little bit of post-apocalypse, or all of this stuff, right? But then, like, I mean, granted, I'm probably not the target audience, but having like, the teenage girl be the big hero, but having some of those challenges doesn't necessarily resonate with me. So, it's fine, but it's not like it captures me per se. And I thought, like I enjoy the world building, right, as much as anything. So like the character can be kind of incidental, but it's like I still don't know what the point is. Like what is the story you're trying to tell when you kill off your main character, right? And so I guess, part of the point of the third story is like, okay, dealing with the tragedy and kind of moving on and whatever. Like these are all real stories. I get that. So is Goodfellas. That doesn't mean I enjoyed it, right? Like I approach my entertainment differently, like a healthy amount of it I want it to be escapism. There are certainly plenty of shit that I enjoy because it's real, right? Let's get into 40K. You want to talk about the harsh fucking realities of the world? Let's get grimdark, right? Let's fucking do it. Let's be like, you rolled out of bed and got eaten by an alien because fuck you, because the universe hates you. That's why, like, there's certainly space for that sort of thing, but I didn't understand what the point was at the end. They set up all this stuff, they deal with the interpersonal, they deal with the politics, they deal with the gal who we probably should be looking up to because she's the leader of the science faction. She's taking over and she's manipulating their society and whatever. So I'm like, is the thing the scientists are trying to save us against our will, or is the theme scientists are bad? Because they're going to manipulate us through science or whatever. And then she dies. And I don't even remember why. I just remember hating it. It'd just be like, I think she sacrifices herself for her boyfriend, for the other main character. And it's just like, now I'm just mad. Like, I'm not like, there's no tragedy here. I'm just mad. So.
You said you're more into movies and stuff for the escapism.
Yeah.
You were also big into Game of Thrones, right?
No.
I was big into Game of Thrones. Are you out of your fucking mind?
Did you not like the first
I'm a Luddite for Game of Thrones. I'm like the only guy who's like, I've watched one episode and I hate it.
Okay, fine. Everybody's into Game of Thrones.
Who are you talking to? Who have you been talking to?
I just remember it wrong, though, because it's just like everybody watches Game of Thrones, right?
No.
Almost everybody.
Yeah. No.
But what I was just wondering is like, because that's actually I mean it's kind of grimdark, and it's
right.
So it's just, but
and that was where like I was almost going to give it its shot, right? And like because it's so popular and stuff, and it's like maybe I'm missing some of this, right? But it kind of goes to like it butts up against some of my values, and like I don't want to break down this wall because I don't know. I don't want to think about what it's going to look like on the other side. I don't give a shit, right? It's it's fine. We're telling a real story. It's fine. We're doing all of these things. It's fine. We're doing historical. Why we got to bring the pedophilia into it? Why we got to bring murdering the children into it? Why, yeah, all of these terrible things happen. If I want to know about that, I will go read a history book. I don't want to pay somebody to entertain me by bringing those up as factors and whatever. Like, you know, the children are the saviors, but in order to get here, that guy had to be put out of a window. She had to be raped. He had to be. That's not. No, thank you. That's not the story that I'm here for. You know, like, you know, sorry, I might be vanilla and lame. Give me the chosen one. Let's get, you know, Liu Kang in here and go punch a god in the face or something. I don't know, but.
Oh, speaking of which, I saw the first 8 minutes of the Mortal Kombat movie.
Yeah.
Looks really good.
Okay, I might be watching it tonight, so that might be a fun thing. I'm going to a drive-in potentially, so I'm compared to the house. Okay. It's so exciting.
Not a fair comparison, but compared to the old Mortal Kombat, it's like, what the fuck?
But yeah, it's still a COVID safe activity. But I've had my second shot, and I'm like a week and a half post, so I'm not following the CDC guidelines. Let's be fair, but. You know, like the risks are extremely small, and I'll be with my brother who's at least got his first shot. So, you know, and that assumes we even do that to begin with, because it's like drive-in sounds fun, but where do you get the time? I don't have cocaine. I don't want to be starting a movie at midnight and watching it until like 3 a.m. I'm old and have kids now.
I'm not Henry Hill, damn it.
Right. And I mean, at least Mortal Kombat's the first of the double feature. The second one is like some horror movie that I probably would enjoy but have never heard of, so it's 50-50.
Do you know what it's called? Just because I'm curious.
I don't remember off the top of my head. Hey, Google's listening, so it auto-completed my
yeah, how
my
helpful
search.
Not creepy.
Like I type in Redwood and it's like Redwood Drive-In, so don't give me this shit. Come on. Theaters, yeah, I know. I just show me what's playing. You showed me what was The Unholy. So
doesn't ring a bell at all.
Yeah, I've never heard of it, but I mean, I had never heard of like The Conjuring until, you know, that like that's supposedly based off a book and whatever too, right? But The Conjuring was okay. I mean, I think that's a problem. Like, it's really hard to get a horror movie that I like really like, and I think part of it maybe is because the tropes are so narrow that it's like, what can you do that's new, you know? And
great guy they got for that movie. I love Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Oh, for The Unholy, that's a big thing. Are we gonna wrap this up at some point? We're just gonna talk.
Just wondering about that.
I guess we should just wrap it up.
We just talk. This is what we do. That's why we started this podcast, because we got all this waste talk where we were just talking for an hour after the podcast anyway. So
yeah, that's why this title is what it is. Why we weren't recording it. We accidentally recorded it.
Right. Oh no.
All right. We're doing more speculation trusted next week. Right?
I guess.
Like, no real topic. We're just going to talk about mantles and make you mad again.
Yeah, right. We should probably talk about all the things that are supposed to happen in 12 months. And, you know, we can talk about the theory that Harry's just going to like get grabbed, you know, from his bed into the mirror universe, or just wake up in the mirror universe or something. But there we go. That's the whole episode. You can save yourself a trip. Don't do it. We're awesome. We'll talk about something.
All right.
We'll definitely talk. That's
yes, we will talk.
We can guarantee you at least 60 minutes.
Whether or not it will be an insightful conversation, we'll see.
Did you listen to our last Justin episode?
No. Was it good?
There was a shitty part in the middle.
Oh, Scott.
Just go watch it.